For 30 years, Johnny Carson had been America's familiar voice in the late hours. And on May 22, 1992, it was finally time to say farewell. The last show went exactly as he hoped. The humor, the emotion, the long applause from 50 million viewers. But once the cameras turned off and the studio cleared out, Johnny and his final guest, Bette Midler, remained on that historic stage. What he shared with her in those quiet minutes had nothing to do with comedy, success, or television milestones. It was something far more personal and far more difficult. 25 years later, when Bette finally revealed Johnny's words, people understood why she had waited. Some truths are too heavy to share right away. It was May 22, 1992, inside NBC's Studio One in Burbank, California. Johnny Carson was preparing to end the most iconic run in television. 3 decades, for 1,531 episodes, and countless moments that helped shape American culture. The atmosphere in the studio was both energized and somber. Everyone realized they were seeing the conclusion of a chapter no one could recreate. Crew members who had been with Johnny for years were openly emotional. The audience of 200 specially chosen guests sat quietly, trying to take in every moment. Johnny had organized the night carefully. No celebrity interviews, only highlights, reflections, and a few musical pieces. He wanted the farewell done in his style, understated, elegant, and fully on his terms. But he made one exception. There was one person he insisted on having there, Bette Midler. Bette had long been Johnny's favorite guest. She had appeared on The Tonight Show many times, always bringing energy, humor, and a voice that could fill the room. More importantly, there was deep respect between them, a genuine friendship unusual in the competitive entertainment world. For the final night, Johnny asked Bette to perform 2 songs to close out his 30 years on late-night television. One for My Baby, and one more for the road, and You Made Me Love You. When Bette began singing One for My Baby, something unique happened. The reflective song about a final goodbye felt perfectly matched to the moment. Johnny sat at his desk watching her perform. And for the first time in 3 decades, he wasn't acting as the host everyone knew. He was simply Johnny, a man saying farewell to the life that had shaped him completely. Betty's voice wavered with emotion. Tears ran down her face, yet she continued singing without stopping. The cameras caught everything. Johnny wiping his eyes, crew members tearing up behind the equipment, and the audience sitting in quiet disbelief. When Bette finished You Made Me Love You, she walked toward Johnny's desk. They shared a long, sincere hug between 2 friends, marking the end of a chapter neither felt prepared to close. The standing ovation went on for nearly 5 minutes. After Betty's performance, Johnny delivered his final monologue, short, modest, and unmistakably Carson. "I am one of the lucky people in the world," Johnny said, his voice calm but touched with emotion. "I found something I always wanted to do, and I have enjoyed every minute of it." He paused and looked straight into the camera. "I bid you a very heartfelt good night." The familiar theme music played as the cameras slowly pulled back. The credits rolled. After 30 years, The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson had come to an end. The audience continued clapping for what seemed like forever. Johnny waved, offered his classic smile one final time, and walked off the stage. But the cameras didn't show what followed. When the studio lights faded, something different unfolded. The audience left slowly, many wiping their eyes, reluctant to step away. The crew moved carefully, almost as though taking the set apart made the ending feel more final. Johnny stood backstage, still wearing his suit, still appearing like the Johnny Carson the country recognized. But his stance had shifted. The pressure of staying polished and present for 3 decades seemed to settle on him at once. Doc Severinsen walked over, offering a quiet handshake. Ed McMahon, who had said "Here's Johnny" for 30 years, hugged him with the closeness of family. "We did it, John," Ed said softly. "Yeah, we did," Johnny answered. But there was one more person Johnny needed to meet before walking out of Studio One for the last time. Bette Midler. Bette was in her dressing room, still wearing the elegant black dress from her performance. Her makeup was slightly smudged. She sat in front of the mirror, trying to absorb the moment. A gentle knock at the door. "Come in," Bette said. Johnny Carson stepped inside. She turned toward him, observing him closely. She had never seen him this unguarded. "Johnny," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Why now? Why did you really decide to step away?" It was the question the entire country wanted answered. Johnny was still at the height of his career. His ratings were outstanding. He could have continued for many more years. Johnny stayed silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Bet, I'm 66. I've spent 30 years going to bed at 2 in the morning, waking up already thinking about the next show. I've interviewed presidents, film stars, and people whose names I barely recall. I've tried to keep people laughing through divorces, conflicts, and national tragedies." He paused, emotion in his eyes. "But do you want the real reason?" He hesitated. "I can't remember the last time I wasn't performing. Even at home, even alone, I'm still acting like Johnny Carson. And I'm tired, Bet. I'm truly tired of being that version of myself." "Got a minute?" he asked gently. "Johnny, always," she replied. They sat together on the small couch. For a moment, neither said a word. The significance of the night lingered in the air. "Thank you," Johnny finally said. "For being here. For the songs. For everything." Bet gently squeezed his hand. "Are you doing all right?" Johnny smiled, but it wasn't the familiar on-camera expression. It was genuine, touched with sadness. "You know what's strange? I've prepared for this night for years. I knew exactly when I wanted to step away and how I wanted it to happen. But now that the moment has arrived, I'm not sure what to do next." Bet felt a deep concern. The man beside her wasn't the confident host who commanded millions. He was simply someone who had given his all and wasn't sure who he would be without the role. "What will you do now?" she asked softly. Johnny looked at her and offered his first truly relaxed smile of the evening. "I'm not sure, and that scares me and excites me. Maybe I'll go sailing. Maybe I'll play more tennis. Maybe I'll just sit on my deck and look at the ocean without needing to be witty or sharp for anyone." He walked over to the window, watching the crew pack equipment in the parking area. "You know what the hardest part is? People think I'm walking away from something. But really, I'm walking towards something I've never had. The chance to just be John. Not Johnny Carson. Just John." Bet stepped beside him and rested a hand on his shoulder. "Then that's what you should do. You've earned it, Johnny. You gave the country 30 years. Now you get to give yourself the time you never had." Johnny turned toward her, his eyes red but still smiling. "Can I ask you a favor?" "Anything," she replied. "What I shared with you. The exhaustion, the uncertainty, not knowing who I am without the show. I don't want that made public. Not yet. Maybe never. People see Johnny Carson as confident and successful. Maybe that's the way it should remain." Bet understood. He was sharing a part of his real self and trusting her to protect it. "I won't tell anyone," she said. "Not while you're alive. But Johnny, someday people should know. They should understand that even the strongest people become exhausted. That truth helps others." Johnny nodded. "Someday, but not now." "Not now," Bet agreed. They hugged again, longer this time. "I should go," Johnny said, his voice steadier. "Alexis is waiting." They walked together toward the stage door. The studio was nearly empty. A few crew members stayed back respectfully. Johnny stopped at the door and looked at Bet one more time. "Thank you for understanding. And thank you for keeping my secret." "It's not a secret, Johnny," Bet replied. "It's simply the truth, and I'll hold it until the world is ready." Johnny kissed her cheek, then stepped outside into the California night. Bet remained there watching him leave. She knew she had witnessed something significant. Not just the close of a show, but the start of a man finally searching for himself. Johnny Carson withdrew from public life after that night. No interviews, no appearances, no special events. He spent his days sailing, playing tennis, and sitting on his deck in Malibu. He learned how to be John again. Bet kept her promise. She never revealed their conversation. People continued to speculate about his departure, but only she knew the truth. Johnny lived 13 years in retirement and found a peace he never experienced during his television career. In 2005, Johnny passed away at age 79. Weeks later, Bet received a letter dated 1 month before his death, with instructions to open it only after he was gone. It was handwritten and brief. "Dear B, if you're reading this, I've passed. Thank you for keeping my words private all these years. You were right. People should know the truth. Not to lessen what we accomplished, but to show that it's okay to feel tired, unsure, and to want a different life. I found him, by the way, John. It took time, but I finally discovered who I was without the cameras. He's not as funny as Johnny Carson, but he's more at peace, and that's enough. Feel free to tell our story now. Maybe it will help someone who feels lost in their work." Thank you for being my friend when it mattered most. John. Bette kept the letter private for 12 more years. In 2017, during an interview for her memoir, she finally shared the story of their dressing room conversation from May 22, 1992. She told it all: Johnny's honesty, his exhaustion, his uncertainty, and his effort to rediscover himself. The interview went viral. But instead of disappointment, people felt moved. Social media filled with messages from those who related to his struggle: overworked executives, retired athletes, performers who had forgotten who they were outside their careers. Johnny Carson was my hero, one person wrote. But learning he struggled makes him even more inspiring. He had the courage to step back and find himself. The revelation reshaped how people viewed not only Johnny Carson, but the idea of success. It opened discussions about the cost of fame, the importance of identity outside of work, and the bravery it takes to step away. David Letterman, one of Johnny's protégés, later spoke about it. Johnny taught us how to host a show, Letterman said. But in his final act, he taught us something more valuable: how to recognize when it's time to stop. That takes real courage. Johnny Carson's final words to Bette Midler remind us that we are not defined solely by our jobs. For 30 years, Johnny was seen as The Tonight Show, late-night television, the face of America's evenings. But he was also John, a man who enjoyed sailing, tennis, and quiet sunsets. Someone who wanted to understand himself beyond the spotlight. He left the most successful show on television to rediscover who he was. And in doing so, he showed that it's never too late to choose peace over performance, authenticity over applause, and self-reflection over routine success. Bette waited 25 years to reveal his truth because she knew the world needed to see him as confident and accomplished while he was alive. That was his legacy, his gift. But after he was gone, and after he had found peace, the world needed the full story. Not to diminish his achievements, but to complete them. Johnny Carson's greatest accomplishment wasn't just 30 years of television excellence. It was the courage to step away and rediscover who he truly was. And in the end, John found peace. That is worth more than any applause, rating, or legacy. If this story of courage, honesty, and self-discovery resonated with you, consider subscribing and giving this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to step back, to change, and to rediscover themselves beyond their job title. Have you ever walked away from something successful to find yourself? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to ring the notification bell for more untold stories about the human side of Hollywood's greatest legends.